Chapter 9. Emperors and Popes. Something astonishing is happening. It is not only that the Cold War has ended, and that former antagonists in that war now work together with a new sense of mutual trust. Nor is it only that communism has collapsed in Eastern Europe, and that we are seeing the unbelievable formation of a new European community, stretching from the Atlantic to the Soviet Union's easternmost shores on the Pacific. Nor is it just that a new era of peace seems to have dawned in which aggressors immediately find themselves confronted by the rest of the world, rising up as one to make them behave. All of these developments border on the miraculous, but there is something more. In addition to all of the above, and far more remarkable, is the exploding worldwide interest in religion and spirituality. We have already pointed out that Jesus and his apostles foretold the coming of a time of apparent peace that would lead to Armageddon, and also prophesied a religious revival involving deception that would prepare the world for the Antichrist. Most amazing is the convergence of all these events at one time, thereby setting the stage for the fulfillment in our day of the prophesied revival of the Roman Empire. If this is indeed the case, then we are witnessing one of the most important events of all time, and one that will precipitate both the rise of Antichrist and the second coming. In the last chapter, we saw that because the Roman Empire was a highly religious entity with an official world religion, therefore the revival of that empire would necessitate a restoration of that same religion to its former status once again. If that should occur, it would be even more significant than any political or military developments. The question, then, is whether we are witnessing merely a revival of religion in general, or moving toward the restoration of the official religion of the ancient Roman Empire. The political summit at Malta between U.S. President Bush and Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev in early December 1989 undoubtedly played a major role in establishing a new working relationship of mutual trust between these two world leaders and the superpowers they represented. It could only be properly evaluated, however, in the context of the religious summit which preceded it. The meeting between Gorbachev and the Pope on December 1, 1989, changed all the rules of the international game. In 1945, in response to the suggestion that the Vatican might object to some of his policies, Stalin had sneered, "How many divisions did you say the Pope had?" It was in obvious admission of the power of nearly 900 million Catholics worldwide that 44 years later, Gorbachev journeyed to Rome to make his peace with the current Pope. In the opinion of Joseph Sobran, syndicated columnist and senior editor of National Review, quote, "The real summit, the one that deserves to be called historic, occurred not in Malta but in Vatican City. There Rome and Moscow met. Moscow was on its knees. Mr. Gorbachev, a baptized Christian, referred to the Pope as Holy Father, praised the Pope and the influence of all faiths. Men such as John Paul II, Lech Walesa, and Mikhail Gorbachev are the founding fathers of a new world order," unquote. Why did the Soviet president make his unprecedented pilgrimage not to the World Council of Churches headquarters in Geneva, but to the Vatican in Rome? Let Gorbachev explain. After his audience with the Pope, he took his wife Reza's hands and greeted her, an atheist professor of scientific Marxism, with these words, "We have visited the highest religious authority in the world." Authority, and the power that goes with it, that is what Gorbachev understands and wants to use. In contrast to previous Kremlin leaders, Gorbachev had been making clear for a number of months the great importance he placed upon religion, and well he might, considering the estimated 70 million professing Christians in the Soviet Union, plus 74 million in the 6 satellite nations of Eastern Europe, to say nothing of the swelling numbers of Muslims and Buddhists. Religion's role in shaping the new world would obviously be a major one, and the leader of world atheism had plans to exploit that fact. Inviting Russian Orthodox Church leaders into the Kremlin for a highly publicized meeting, Gorbachev promised greater religious tolerance, sought support for his drive for domestic change, and condemned past repression of religious activity. The unusual meeting, reported by the official news agency TASS, was the lead item on the evening news program Fremia, and a front-page story in that day's editions of Pravda and other Soviet dailies. Gorbachev's attitude toward religion, and particularly Christianity, has been an astonishing departure from official Kremlin policy. As the leader of a country whose official religion is scientific atheism, his sworn duty has been to destroy all other faiths. Yet in his book, Perestroika, Gorbachev had boldly revealed his sympathy for religion and his recognition of the vital role it must play in bringing peace and creating the new world order. That as a child he was baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church as Mikhail Sergeyevich means little, if anything. Christianity is important to Gorbachev only because of its function as an essential ingredient for uniting his own country, Europe, and then the world. In fact, the Soviet president has surprisingly appealed a number of times to Russia's Christian roots as justification for its inclusion in the new united Europe. Those statements have boggled Western Soviet experts. Gorbachev appears to be willing to allow a revival of Christianity in the USSR because he sees it as an essential step toward membership in the EC. In Perestroika, he wrote, quote, "Some in the West are trying to exclude the Soviet Union from Europe. Such ploys, however, cannot change the geographic and historical realities. We are Europeans. Old Russia was united with Europe by Christianity, and the millennium of its arrival in the land of our ancestors will be marked next year." That was 1988. Unquote. Something of incredible importance is happening. The leader of world communism and atheism, which has sworn to destroy all religion, now claims that the Soviet Union is a Christian country and is encouraging the growth of Christianity. No one in his right mind would have dreamed of such an impossible scenario. Yet it is unfolding before our eyes. Indeed, it had to for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. That fact is what makes these developments so significant and exciting to the Christian. Pope John Paul II showed remarkable agreement with Gorbachev long before their historic meeting in December 1989. In spite of Eastern Europe's domination by atheism for more than 70 years, the Pope sensed, along with a Soviet leader, the vital role that would be played by religion, and especially by Christianity, in creating the New World Order. As Newsweek reported, quote, "The jewel in the Pope's international design as a utopian vision of a unified and re-Christianized Europe stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Ural Mountains. Phase 1 would be an end to the division between Eastern and Western Europe. Phase 2, reconciliation between Roman Catholics and the Orthodox Christians of the Soviet East." Unquote. That this dream, as the first step toward a new world order, is shared both by the Pope and the President of the Soviet Union must be more than coincidence. What went on in their secret meeting in Rome when they spoke Russian together without interpreters present, we can only guess. What we do know is that their mutual dream began to take on substance shortly after that meeting. In a groundbreaking speech in Rome 2 days before his audience with the Pope, Gorbachev depicted religion as a powerful moral force that is helping perestroika. He candidly declared that he was openly seeking the moral force of organized religion as an ally for his sweeping restructuring of an alienated Soviet society. That staggering announcement from the head of the Soviet Union was a pragmatic acknowledgement that atheism, Russia's official faith, had utterly failed to capture the masses, while religion, cruelly suppressed and derided for the past 70 years, had multiplied its adherents. As the astonished press reported, quote, "Confirming the new official view of religion in a nation that has long been aggressively atheistic, Gorbachev told the Pope that believers of many faiths, Jews to Buddhists, Christians to Muslims, live in the Soviet Union today. All of them have a right to satisfy their spiritual needs," he said. "Shortly, a law on the freedom of conscience will be adopted in our country." Unquote. In turn, the Pope gave his blessing to the restructuring of Soviet society proceeding under Gorbachev's revolutionary program of perestroika. That restructuring had already brought about the unprecedented television broadcasting of worship services, the opening of 3,000 churches in the previous 9 months, and the celebration of the Orthodox Eucharist in the 15th century Assumption Cathedral inside the Kremlin, the first time since 1918. The Religion News Writers Association named Gorbachev the #1 religion newsmaker of 1989 and called his meeting with Pope John Paul II the year's top religious news story. The two leaders, described in news reports as the two most compelling figures on the world stage today, agreed to restore diplomatic relations and official ties between the Holy See and the Kremlin, a relationship that had been broken during the revolution in 1917. There can be no doubt that this new partnership between John Paul II and Mikhail Gorbachev has as its goal a new world united not only politically and economically, but religiously. The significance of this development cannot be overstated. The Pope and Gorbachev are not the only world leaders who see religion, and especially Christianity, as playing a key role in forming the New World Order. As we have already seen, Czechoslovakian President Václav Havel is another. Robert Mueller, recently retired Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, has stated, quote, "I have come to believe firmly today that our future peace, justice, and fulfillment, happiness and harmony on this planet will not depend on world government, but on divine or cosmic government. My great personal dream is to get a tremendous alliance between all major religions and the UN." Unquote. Referring to the deep economic problems that have plagued the USSR, in spite of repeated 5-year plans, Soviet economist Stanislav Shatilin suggested that a spiritual and moral renewal is necessary for workers to care about their jobs. World Press Review declared, quote, "For Russia to be ready to join the European community, it will have to allow the Christian religion once more to occupy the forefront of life. For Russia is at the heart of a profoundly Christian country, and that is its chief title deed to European status." Unquote. Suddenly, secular leaders are declaring that not just religion, but Christianity is the key to uniting Europe. Why is this so? Since the Antichrist pretends to be Christ, his followers must be Christians, and his world religion must be a perverted form of Christianity. Not only the Pope calls for a spiritually united Europe, but numerous other leaders voice the same novel opinion. Orthodox dissident leader Alexander Ogorodnikov predicts a second Christianation of Russia. That process seems to have already begun under Gorbachev's bold leadership, as indeed it must. It does not mean, however, what most Christians imagine. Evangelicals are encouraged by the new freedom of religion introduced into the Soviet Union by Gorbachev, and indeed, every effort ought to be made to take advantage of the liberty to preach the gospel while it lasts, which may not be long. Many evangelical leaders are equally enamored with Pope John Paul II. America's alleged foremost Christian expert on the family regards the Pope as the most eminent religious leader who names the name of Jesus Christ. Others believe that his is an evangelistic message to turn the world to Christ. In actual fact, neither the Pope nor Gorbachev has the least sympathy for born-again evangelical Christianity, which John Paul II openly derides and warns his flock against. While encouraging dialogue with Buddhists, Muslims, and Hindus, the Pope warns Catholics not to be seduced by Protestant fundamentalist sects. In fact, by quote-unquote Christianity, both Gorbachev and the Pope mean Roman Catholicism. That just happens to have been the official world religion of the Roman Empire, the very religion which must recover that status in preparation for the Antichrist. At the same time that the foundation is being laid for the political revival of the Roman Empire, something else of equal significance is happening. The Church and Christianity of ancient Rome are being resurrected before our very eyes, with the blessing of the leaders of the world's religions and leading Protestants as well. A brief look at history will help us to understand that what happened to Christianity under Constantine is recurring today. The ancient Roman Empire was a pluralistic society, such as both Gorbachev and the Pope hoped to create. Any religion was tolerated. There was, however, one exception: Christianity, which by its very claims condemned all other religions. Christians were hated and persecuted and often killed, not because they believed in Christ, but because they believed only in him. This was the faith which Peter had boldly expressed to the rabbis in Jerusalem, and which made the Jewish religious leaders so furious that they determined to kill the apostles. "Be it known unto you all, and to all the people of Israel, that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom ye crucified, whom God raised from the dead, even by him does this man stand here before you whole," that is, healed. "Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved." Acts chapter 4, verses 10 and 12. That same belief aroused the hatred and loathing of the pagan leaders as well. The Romans were convinced that the Christians' atheism, that is, rejection of pagan deities, brought the wrath of the gods upon the whole empire. Christians had abandoned the religion of their forefathers, accepted Jewish myths at their face value, and made a criminal, that is Jesus, into a cult hero. Just as the Roman emperors ultimately realized in their day, so Gorbachev too has recognized that the persecution of Christians is futile. Tertullian saying, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church," was all too true. The Emperor Constantine decided that, to unify the empire, Christians should be given the right to worship as they pleased. Gorbachev has obviously come to the same conclusions with regard to the USSR and the world. Soviet Christians need to remember history. A brilliant military commander, Constantine also understood that there could be no political stability without religious unity. Yet to accomplish that feat would require a union between paganism and Christianity. How could it be accomplished? The empire needed an ecumenical religion that would appeal to every citizen in a multicultural society. Giving Christianity official status was not enough to bring internal peace to the empire. Christianity had to undergo a transformation so that pagans could convert without giving up their old beliefs and rituals. Constantine himself exemplified this expediency. He adopted Christ as the new God that had given him victory in the crucial battle at Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, and brought him into Rome as its conqueror. Yet, as Caesar, he continued to function as the Pontifex Maximus of the empire's pagan priesthood, known as the Pontifical College. Even as he endowed Christian churches, Constantine continued to support the construction of pagan temples. As a quote-unquote Christian emperor, he automatically became the de facto civil head of the Christian church and seduced her with promises of power. Thus began the destruction of Christianity and the process that created Roman Catholicism as it is today. Satan offered to give Jesus the kingdom of this world if only he would bow down and worship him. Jesus, of course, refused. Constantine offered, for his own reasons, to share his kingdom with a church that was weary of persecution, and she succumbed to the temptation. As historian Will Durant explains, quote, Constantine aspired to an absolute monarchy. Such a government would profit from religious support. Perhaps that marvelous organization of bishops and priests could become an instrument of pacification, unification, and rule. Throughout his reign, he treated the bishops as his political aides. He summoned them, presided over their councils, and agreed to enforce whatever opinion their majority should formulate. A real believer would have been a Christian first and a statesman afterward. With Constantine, it was the reverse. Christianity was to him a means, not an end." Unquote. Christianity became a means for nearly everyone. Being a Christian was soon essential to anyone who wanted to advance in business, politics, or even the military. Thus, many became Christians for the accompanying advantages, a problem the church had been spared when being a Christian meant persecution and possible martyrdom. Ecclesiastical posts from priest to bishop, cardinal, and even pope went to the highest bidder. Augustine lamented the debilitating effect upon the Christian church. Quote, "The man who enters, that is a 4th century church, is bound to see drunkards, misers, tricksters, gamblers, adulterers, fornicators, people wearing amulets, assiduous clients of sorcerers, astrologers. He must be warned that the same crowds that press into the churches on Christian festivals also fill the theaters on pagan holidays." Unquote. So the quote-unquote Christianity of the Roman Empire, which became known as Roman Catholicism, and of which the Pope is the head today, was not the same as the biblical Christianity of the early church and of the martyrs. Instead, it was the old paganism of Rome, surviving under a thin veneer of Christian terminology and form. Says Durant, quote, "When Christianity conquered Rome, the ecclesiastical structure of the pagan church, the title and vestments of the Pontifex Maximus, the worship of the Great Mother and a multitude of comforting divinities, the sense of supersensible presences everywhere, the joy or solemnity of old festivals, and the pageantry of immemorial ceremony passed like maternal blood into the new religion, and captive Rome captured her conqueror. While Christianity converted the world converted Christianity." Unquote. As head of the Church, Constantine claimed 2 new titles in addition to paganism's Pontifex Maximus, Vicar of Christ and Bishop of Bishops. The title, Vicar of Christ, is most interesting. Vicar comes from the Latin word vicarius. The Greek equivalent would be anti, as in Antichrist. Using the Greek, then, Constantine as Vicar of Christ was an Antichrist, and so are the popes, for they bear the same title. Antichrist will be the new Constantine, the head of the revived Roman Empire worldwide, while the Pope will be his assistant, the second beast of Revelation 13. Early Protestant creeds unanimously called the Pope Antichrist, not only because of Rome's heresies, but because the lives of many popes exemplified Antichrist's evil. More than one pope vacated Peter's throne when killed by a furious husband who caught him in bed with his wife. Even Catholic historians admit that many of the popes were among the most inhuman monsters to walk this earth. In Vicars of Christ, Jesuit Peter de Rosa reminds us that pope after pope engaged habitually on a grand scale in wholesale mayhem and murder, pillage, rape, incest, simony, and corruption of the worst sort. Their evil lives are a blot upon the pages of history. It is a travesty to refer to such shameless perverts and master criminals as His Holiness or Vicar of Christ, as they all are in official Roman Catholic dogma and documents. Even if the popes had all been paragons of virtue, it would still be a mockery to claim that they represent an unbroken chain of apostolic succession back to Peter. Such a concept is unknown in the New Testament, and even if it were, it would have been necessary for each pope, as the possessor of an authority allegedly passed down from Peter, to have passed it on personally to a successor. Yet the popes did not choose their successors, and still do not to this day, much less lay hands upon and pass on any authority to them. It became the custom for the popes to be voted in by the populace of Rome, a populace which had its own selfish reasons for desiring one candidate above another. Such a majority vote could hardly be called apostolic succession, and in fact is not acceptable by Rome today. Some popes were deposed by angry mobs in protest of their unbearable evil. Some were installed and or deposed by kings and emperors. Political expediency, along with the wealth and influence of the candidate, as often as not determined who would be pope. Apostolic succession? Indeed. As their reward for doing his bidding, Constantine endowed his 3 religious titles upon the popes, an office which he created, the better to use the church for the imperial good. It was Constantine who decreed that since Rome was the capital of the empire, its bishop should be the ecclesiastical head of the church. Prior to that time there had been no pope, but bishops of equal authority presiding over the regions surrounding Rome, Antioch, Alexandria, Jerusalem, and Constantinople. Thereafter, the popes worked closely with the emperors in the administration of the empire. The 3 titles bestowed by Constantine upon them are still retained by the popes, known as Roman pontiffs, to this day. While the Roman Empire was thoroughly pagan in the beginning, quote-unquote Christianity had become, in the end, its official faith. It was Christianity, in fact, which gave the empire a unity and continuity that held it together culturally and religiously. When the empire later disintegrated politically under the onslaught of the barbarians, it was held together religiously by the all-pervasive presence of the Roman Catholic Church, with its ingenious ecumenical blend of paganism and Christianity still headquartered in Rome. Consequently, it was to the popes, successors of the pagan emperors, that the world of the Middle Ages looked for leadership in the long-awaited revival of the Roman Empire, which nearly everyone longed for as a return to the good old days. No one seemed aware, however, not even the popes and Roman Catholic theologians, that the empire's revival was prophesied in the Bible as something evil that would occur in the last days, and upon which God's judgment would fall. Ignorance of Bible prophecy still prevails among Catholics, and there seem to be decreasing numbers of Protestants as well who understand that subject today. The parallels between Constantine and Gorbachev are, in the very least, fascinating. Gorbachev has shown his fellow communists the better way to destroy the Church. Give it the same freedom it has enjoyed in the West, and take it in as a partner in solving the pressing problems of state. Share the kingdoms of this world with it, just as Constantine did. In place of deliberate atheistic brainwashing, the new tactics are far more subtle and effective. Gorbachev seems to have in mind the same use of Christianity as did Constantine, and for basically the same purpose. He does not need to create a new Christianity, however, for it already exists, having been created by Constantine 1600 years ago. And today the influence exerted by the head of Rome's Christianity extends far beyond the confines of the ancient Roman Empire, making the Pope once again the ideal partner for the Antichrist in ruling what will be a worldwide kingdom of darkness. This is not to proclaim that Gorbachev is the Antichrist and John Paul II the false prophet, but that the pattern is definitely emerging, whether it is to be played out in the final act of history by these two men or some others. The pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together in line with biblical prophecy. According to U.S. News and World Report, Pope John Paul II discusses world affairs weekly with U.S. President George Bush and also with Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. That the Pope is almost universally recognized as the religious leader of the world takes on great significance as we see the revival of the Roman Empire underway. Other world leaders are adding their voices to the call by former UN Assistant Secretary General Robert Mueller for the Pope to come to the United Nations to speak for all the religions and spiritualities on this planet. The picture becomes ever clearer and more ominous.